I don't know about you, but I could have sung I Trust in Him probably about 1,000 more times. I'm a person that has to continually say it because, and what we'll talk about today is that reality doesn't always match up with our expectations and these things that we believe that we should be walking into and the life that we should be walking into and how all the different things that God has promised should come into fruition. And in those moments when expectations and reality don't match up, I find myself desperately needing to sing exactly what we sung. That I trust in Him. I've seen it done over and over and over again. But why is it so hard? Why is it so hard when expectations and reality don't mesh up for us to not just sing that, because it's easy to sing it over and over again, but to really believe it to be true in the depths of our souls? Because let's pause for a second and say and ask ourselves, when we were singing that over and over and over again, that, and I know that sometimes in the modern day music that it sometimes seems like we're singing it way too much, but really, when you just sung that, were you just singing it or was it living in the midst of you? And as you sung it yet again, did you really believe it to be true? Because I know that some of us are walking in the midst of reality that we were not expecting, and our expectations and what we are experiencing is not at all lining up with what we thought our life would be at this moment in time. We're walking back into the story of God today. And we're walking into Ezra and Nehemiah, and we are turning the page into Ezra. And as we do, we realize very quickly as we flip through the next page, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through Nehemiah, that reality doesn't always match up with the expectations that have been birthed within us. Because see, when we turn the page into Ezra chapter 1, we meet the people of God where they are getting a chance to come back home. We meet Cyrus the king that says, hey, my heart's been stirred by God, and now is the time that you can go back to Jerusalem and you can begin to rebuild the temple. Oh, this is a mighty moment that we are walking into today. A moment where expectations get all ooey and gooey and gathered within ourselves, and you get so excited at the fact that these people who have been exiled, a promised exile of 70 years, can you imagine? Being told you can't go home for 70 years? A people who were conquered by the Babylonian Empire, and not just conquered, but loved ones are slain and killed, and then the ones that are left behind have to go and serve that same kingdom. And then on top of that, we find out, now here's something important to note, that if you have been journeying along with us through Genesis through Revelation, you quickly begin to discover that the books of the Bible are not in chronological order. And so for you to get the full scope of it, you sometimes have to jump around a little bit. So for us to get the full scope of what's happening in Ezra and Nehemiah, which is actually, I know in our Bible that it is broken up into 2 books, but originally it was written as one document by one author. Now, what's happening in the midst of that is also happening in Ezekiel and Jeremiah. And so you kind of have to flip the pages forward a little bit to understand all the things that are going on. So here they get captured by the Babylonian Empire. They go into exile. They are having to be told that they're going to be 70 years in exile. And the prophet of Jeremiah comes along. Now, I love Jeremiah. But if Jeremiah came to me with the word that he is about to give them, I would have looked at him and go, I don't know if I like you anymore, and I don't know if we can be friends. Because the problem is that you were just captured and all your family and friends that you have lost, and now you're having to figure out how to live in a strange land, serving the same kingdom who captured you, and begin to be able to figure out what life is going to now look like. The prophet Jeremiah comes along and says, I need you to settle in. You're going to be here for a while, and I need you to flourish. I need you to go ahead and build homes. I need you to get married. I need you to have kids. I need you to grow crops. You're going to have a quote-unquote good life for just a little bit. I need you to really put some roots down because it's going to be a second. Could you imagine? I just want to know, is your response the same as what my gut reaction would first be? I think a lot of us, because there are some smiling, going, yeah, I'm right there with you, Bobbi. I don't know if I would look at Jeremiah and want to be friends with him still. Because I would say, you want me to settle in into the same empire that has captured me? You want me to be able to live a flourishing life in the midst of people who took everything away from me? You want me to figure out how to live a life in the midst of exile? That's what all has happened as we step into Ezra today. All of that. They did exactly what Jeremiah asked them to do. They were faithful to God in the midst of it. Praise God, hallelujah. I don't know how they did it, but man, they did it, and they did it great. And then you fast forward to this moment that we step into today, and all the things that they had been dreaming and hoping for, the things that had got them to be able to put one step in front of the other, the hope that one day, if they're just faithful, that they can return to their hometown, their homelands, all that they know and love. All would be good. Life would be right again. The expectations we have would be the reality that we get to live. But if you've read with us any at all through Ezra and ultimately Nehemiah, you would quickly come to the understanding that expectations and experience don't always line up. Expectation and experience don't always line up. Now, I know this to be true in my own life. There's many different scenarios that we could walk through in the midst of that. But there is one that stands out the most. In 2011, my husband went to Afghanistan for a period of almost exactly 12 months when our kids, our top two, we have 3 now, but our top 2 was 2 years old and a month and a half. And for 12 months, we were dreaming and hoping for the day that he would come home, away from or back from his sense of exile. Did you know that there are 3 definitions to exile? 2 of them are the ones that we focus on today, but one of them is that you are far from home for an extended period of time. You can't go home for some reason or another. And the third one is that even though you come home, there's still this sense of feeling of an uneasiness and unrest that separates you from being able to settle back in. 12 months. We were dreaming and hoping for the day that my husband would physically come back from a strange land, back to the people that he called home and to the place that he called home. Now, I can't tell you what his expectations that were bubbling within him throughout those 12 months, but I can tell you what mine were. Mine were the fact that he left just before we really got to understand what it meant to be a family of 4. And I was dreaming and envisioning all the amazing and wonderful things that would happen when he would come home. I was dreaming of our 2 little girls running to him with open and wide arms and saying, "Daddy, you're so home, and I can't wait to show you all the things and do all the things." I was dreaming of those moments where they would giggle and run and chase him around the living room, or that we would spend our nights walking the neighborhood and chatting about our day and about our hopes and our dreams. Expectations versus experience don't always line up. It's not always the reality that we end up walking through. The question before us today is that when that happens in our life, and let's face it, it happens a lot, right? What do we do? How do we respond? How do we take that next step of faith? Ezra and Nehemiah are two men that I have come to completely and wholeheartedly understand as I watched my husband walk through this process of transitioning home from his own sense of exile. And I understand that they have this longing and desire to help the exiles come back home. And not just come back home, but to live a life that God was extending unto them. A life of beauty and wonder, a life of completeness and wholeness and wholeheartedness, a life where you know without a shadow of a doubt when you say, I trust in God, that you trust in Him in all pockets and areas of your life. And see, I say I understand Ezra and Nehemiah to the heart of my soul because, well, I was like them when my husband came home. They had this belief that if they could just put all the parameters and guidelines and structures around the exiles, that then the exiles would begin to be able to come back to God completely and wholeheartedly, not just body, but also mind, soul, and heart. They believed that if they could just invite them to festivals or make the festivals mandatory to where you did all the things to remember God's faithfulness and the story that they have been grafted into, if you could just have them walk into a space of confession and a space of renewal and continue to put these parameters and structures around them, that they most definitely will wholeheartedly be all in with God. See, I believed the same thing. As I watched my husband navigate, come home bodily, but not wholeheartedly, I started putting all the things into place. All the structures, all the sense of normalcy, all the different parameters. And I began to cry out the same cries that Ezra and Nehemiah cried out. God, I'm doing all the things. I'm trying all the things. I'm praying all the things. But God, nothing is working and they're still not here. He is still not completely and wholeheartedly healed. Would you just bring my husband back fully and completely alive and well? Because God, you tell me in Ezekiel chapter 36, that you are a God that puts a heart of flesh where there was a heart of stone. God, you tell me that you bring and put a spirit of you within us and bring us fully back to life. Why can't I see that? Why don't I see that? And Ezra and Nehemiah are saying the exact same things. The exact same things. Their frustrations and their cries. Because here's one of the cries that I resonate with most is that the last recorded conversation that Nehemiah had with God is that he actually said, God, I did it all. I tried it all. I did everything I humanly can. Would you just have favor in me because I tried, God? What I have learned as I've reread the story as Ezra and Nehemiah, as I have found myself identifying way too much with those two men who longed for the exiles to have a wholehearted, transformed life, is that I've been relying too much on human efforts and forgetting that it is God and God alone that transforms hearts. It is God and God alone that takes out hearts of stones and places a heart of flesh within us. It is through His Spirit and not my spirit that His people come completely and wholeheartedly back to Him and back to their home in Him. expectation versus experience doesn't always line up. What do we do when it doesn't? How do we respond? I asked my husband this the other day as we were talking through all of this and rehashing some of the things that have happened over the years in the midst of him wholeheartedly coming back to life with God and coming back fully from exile, not just body, but heart and mind and soul. I said, babe, I have seen it from the outside in, and I think I understand what happened with you. I think I understand how you have gotten to this point where you really trust in God and you know him to be true and that you're fully and wholeheartedly connected to him. But I need to hear it from you. I need to hear your words tell me what changed for you. Because I walked through those moments, those really, really hard wake-up call is what we call them, wake-up call moments to realize how disconnected he was. And he said, yeah, those were glimpses of this life that I wasn't living, this life that God had already extended into me, this life that Ezra and Nehemiah desperately wanted for the exiles. I got glimpses of that. But really what happened when it began to really grow within me and that heart of stone was chipped away piece after piece after piece and became a heart of flesh. He said, Bobbi, you know what it was? He goes, it was in the moments where experience and expectations didn't line up. Because in those moments, I stayed faithful to him and I kept putting one foot in front of the other when reality didn't make sense, when reality wasn't what I was expecting or hoping or dreaming or envisioning for our life. When it felt like I couldn't see God or know God, I remembered that he is a God that I can trust in, and I continued to take that next step. It was just taking the next step. Something so simple, yet so hard to do. As we were talking about it, I paused for a second, and I said, yeah, that's what I did too. That in those moments that I cried out like Ezra and Nehemiah, and I said, I don't know what else to do, and God said, it's not on you, it's on me. He said, I just need you to be faithful. And so I continued to pray and prayed and prayed and prayed and cried and yelled and did all the things. But I finally let go of needing to be the one that made it happen. I finally let go of needing to be the one that made it happen. I also let go of the timetable. I put a timetable on it. I gave him a year, like in all honesty, in my head. As Clay came back home from Afghanistan, really the hardest transition we've ever made in our marriage, and in most days of that transition, I found myself thinking deployment's harder than him being home. In those days, I said a year, then he's got to be better. And then a year came, and only the tiniest bit of stone was chipped away. And then I said 2 years. And then I said 3 years. And then finally I let it go. And I said, God, I trust in you. I'll take that next step. I'll continue to pray. And God, I know I'll watch my husband come back to life. And I did. There's a reality that we get to live in as the children of God. It's not the reality that Ezra and Nehemiah were fully facing yet because Christ had not yet come. The Messiah had not yet come. But we are new covenant people. We're not old covenant people. And the words that we hear in Ezekiel chapter 36 that says, "For I will take you from the nations, gather you from all the lands, and bring you into your own land. Then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your filthiness and from your idols. Moreover, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. And I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will be careful to observe my ordinance. We are new covenant people. And we have a reality that is right there in front of our face. It is a reality that tells us no matter if expectations and experiences don't line up, it's okay because this is our reality. Our reality is that we are the sons and daughters of our God, that we have an inheritance and we've been given to it, sealed by the Holy Spirit. And because of that, no matter what life throws at us, no matter if reality in the here and now doesn't look right and doesn't make us happy or make us feel like we are walking on the right path, that our path is the one that Christ made available unto us. A new life within him. A heart of flesh and not a heart of stone. That reality stays in front of Clay and I at all hours and all moments of the day. Because even though he is no longer in any sense of exile, and his life came back, our marriage came back, our family came back to life, reality doesn't always line up with my expectations. But this is the reality that I live with. This is the reality that tells me I can take the next step in faith. Even when I don't know or see God, when I don't believe that he's walking with me, for whatever reason or not, I can take the next step. My husband can take the next step. You can take the next step. There's so many rereading your story and dive. And Lord, I thank you for annual lessons to help us to see how to walk through, no matter the expectation within us, not exactly the way we want and hope them to be, that Lord, you are still walking with us, and Lord, that our reality than the reality that this world gives us. And I thank you for the many opportunities that you grant us to be able to see you and know you more. Church, today, there's an opportunity that is placed before us, in which I can't get over it every time that we get a chance.